So let's start with the new Japanalysis video. The Otaku hacker who trolled police for years.
Have you ever watched a TV show where the criminal mastermind manipulates and owns the police at every turn? That could never actually happen in real life, right? Well, in Japan, it did, and it involved this mysterious hacker making all kinds of crazy threats and literally forcing the police to solve his riddles. I mean, he had them chasing down wild cats and deciphering made-up video game languages. But just who was this hacker, and what did he want? The answer to that is something no one could have expected.
By the way, if anyone is wondering where I'm at with Shogi, I did this stream where I tried to learn it 3 weeks ago. I gave up. I mean, I did not have the will to keep going. I gave up.
So it's the summer of 2012 and Japan is getting spammed non-stop with anonymous threats. Within 2 months there were warnings about blowing up a plane, driving a truck into a pedestrian area in Osaka, and even someone threatening to mail a package containing to the... But the weird part was, once the police tracked the threats, it turns out it wasn't one lone maniac, it was 5 of them, and there was no obvious connection between them. One was a college student, and another was a famous anime director.
Really? Wait, what? Japanese anime director is set on suspicion of posting massacre threat online. Masaki Tamura, who has worked on such anime as Yu-Gi-Oh!, is suspected of a bomb threat against the Tokyo to New York flight and threat of an attack in Osaka. I mean, everybody can become crazy, I guess, fair enough. But it's random.
This made no sense, and the police honestly had no idea what was going on. But that didn't matter. These superstar cops would do whatever it took to bust this case open. Yeah, no, they just interrogated each suspect every single day for hundreds of hours until one of them randomly said, I think I was hacked, dude.
I was hacked.
Come on, police have heard that one before. Every suspect said, wait, he actually was hacked? They found a virus on his computer? And the same virus on the other suspects' computers? That might be a bit of an issue because the cops had already...
When I was young and I was pretty stupid, it happened to me once. Like I bricked my computer a couple of times when I was young because, I didn't know anything about them, right? Like the first time I bricked my computer was the first time I had a computer, and I basically went into the system file of Windows, and there was so much file that I had no idea what it was, and I thought it was trash, so I just deleted it. And that bricked the computer, right? But a couple of years later, I think I had Avast antivirus, right? And I hadn't renewed it or something, and I just didn't think it mattered, and I got hacked. So one time it was evening, I was watching a show on my PC, and suddenly I see my mouse start to move, and at first I wasn't worried because sometimes it happens because my mouse is on my bed and it slides a bit, but it starts to move. It double clicks out of the window and then it goes to open Notepad, and I let it happen because I was kind of frozen in fear, and the guy starts writing, I have hacked you. If you don't want me to, I don't know, destroy your computer or do something, you need to pay me or something. I was telling him I'm a kid, I don't have any money, and it was a conversation through Notepad. It was very weird. Eventually he sees that I have Steam and he asked me to give him the Steam account logins, and I was no, sorry, I can't. Now obviously the smart thing to do would have been to right away disconnect from the internet, but I was too stupid, right? And so I talked to him for 2 hours or something, and eventually I just shut up the computer, and the next day I brought it to a neighbor who was an expert in computer. He had built that computer, and he cleaned it and gave it back to me. But that was really terrifying, yeah. And it wasn't actually the first time. I think there was another time where someone hacked me, and it was a weird one because they started talking to me, same thing through the block note, the notepad, and the way they were talking, they sounded like my friend. And I think it's basically because my computer, I'd named my computer my real name, not last name, but the first name. And so this person was talking to me using that name, so I thought it was my friend, but basically it was someone who thought they were hacking their friend because of the computer name, except it wasn't. And me, because I had a friend who was into computer stuff, I thought it was him. So the conversation went for an hour where there was moments of being sus of the other person because they said something weird that felt out of character, but it took like an hour until I realized this is not someone I know. It was a very weird one. And they said like, oh sorry, I was trying to hack my friend, so I leave you alone. And then I just did nothing, like it just was like, okay, whatever. And I did not like reset the computer or like clean it or anything. And then later on I was smarter, so it never happened again. So that's my story.
Pressured two suspects into confessing. But you know, that just shows you how good they are at their jobs, huh? In fact, they were so good, they deluded themselves into thinking they could catch this hacker. You know, the one they didn't even consider existed until the suspect brought it up. Naturally, they start by attempting to reverse engineer the virus. The hacker had done a pretty good job of covering his tracks though, and it was a complete fluke that he was discovered at all. His final victim, the guy who tipped off the police, only noticed something was wrong because he was completely obsessed with monitoring his CPU usage. If you're like 19, it wasn't weird back then actually. In 2012, people actually expected their software to be optimized.
I mean, that makes total sense, yeah. I remember always having like on Windows 7 or XP, which was my first two operating system, I would always have like the control panel open and shut down anything stupid. And I would always monitor like my Firefox. And you know, I've always been like a tab order. So like whenever I would see that the CPU usage or the RAM was getting too high, I would just like shut it down and reopen it so it's like refreshed. It didn't always really make sense, but I did it anyway.
I know. Turns out the common link between the victims was that they had all posted in a 2-channel thread where people asked for software recommendations. The hacker had literally written custom programs to meet each of the victims' needs and secretly attached viruses to them. These idiots downloaded that software and blindly ran it. Victim B, the Yu-Gi-Oh director, had gotten infected because he wanted flashcards for memorizing English words. But Donkey had been out for 6 years at this point.
Okay.
So, after a month of investigation, the police...
Like, you really have to be a gambler to, like, download something like that of 4chan, or 2chan, I guess. Like, I'm sure there was somewhere else on the internet you could have found that.
Police uncovered absolutely nothing, actually. They had 0 leads and 0 suspects. That's where this story should have ended. A bunch of dumb cops failed to solve a dumb case. But things were about to get so much dumber.
Yeah,
but first, a word from today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and it's free on PC.
I thought pas the sponsor, but nice sponsor. Yeah,
and 7 days of premium account, limited time only. On October 10th, 2012, a Japanese TV station was discussing the case live on air when all of a sudden they received an anonymous email.
You've got mail.
The sender claimed to be the hacker who had made all the terroristic threats, and to prove it, he offers up a ton of details that only the police know, and even reveals he was behind a bunch of other threats the police hadn't even tied him to yet. Then he throws down the gauntlet, calling the police a bunch of incompetent morons and dares them to catch him. This guy was basically reenacting an episode of Death Note, only this day.
What the fuck is this video? Holy shit, that's hilarious.
We're like literally nothing. I have to remind you, this isn't the fucking Zodiac killer. This is a guy who uploaded some viruses on 2chan. But the hacker didn't let the embarrassment cool off. He quickly followed up with a second email like, alright, now that I have your attention, let's play a game.
Are you jigsaw?
That game was the attachment, a 7-zip file containing a series of puzzles, where completing each one would get the cops closer to finding his identity. That's right, for the first time ever, these Japanese cops were going to be using their brains to solve a crime.
That's a gamer.
Wait, what the hell is this?
Doraemon on the left. And I kind of feel like I've seen the art style on the right. It looks like some PC 98 visual novel, maybe?
Well, this is the Korean version of Doraemon.
Oh.
So the cops were supposed to translate this Korean, and this is a character from the game Tales of Eternia. So
it's a
you had
Tales
to
game.
translate the fake language from the game Tales of Eternia, which I'm actually surprised the cops did. Solving that gave them the password to open Puzzle 2, which was just a folder containing 84 pictures of the idol group Morning Musume. Except the hint was one of them was broken. What you had to do was take all of these images into extremely specific Japanese image manipulation software called Love Machine, combine them, and then you'd get the password to go on to puzzle number 3. Puzzle 3 was a shogi board with mate in 13. I'll give you guys some time to solve it, but basically you had to sacrifice some pieces, chase the king around, promote a piece, and then once the dragon shows up, it's GG. Puzzle 4 was a strange audio file that sounded like this. Which, when played backwards,
I was
says,
literally about to say that's it. You got bored with the last
after
one.
all that, police received the last puzzle. 2 photos and EXIF data pointing to a spot on Mount Kumotori where, according to the hacker, everything would be revealed to them. The police actually managed to solve all the puzzles and head up to the top of the mountain, the exact spot the hacker showed them, within just a few hours. And to their surprise, they found absolutely nothing. They spent
Trolled.
hours digging around in the snow and came up completely empty-handed. Well, I guess that's it then. It must have just been a hoax. Or at least they hoped it was a hoax, because or else they'd have to admit they were standing right on top of it and still couldn't find it. Everyone thought the cops had lost and it was all over, but 2 days later the hacker sent another email teasing the cops for missing his drive and saying he'd give them one more chance.
Okay.
He gave them a clue to go to the island of Enoshima and look for something pink. When the police got to Enoshima, they had no idea what they were looking for. The island was inhabited by cats. Hundreds and hundreds of cats. There's actually quite a few islands like this in Japan where abandoned cats end up reproducing and taking over the island, which then drives tons of tourism through a phenomenon you could call, like, I don't know, neconomics or something. Just kidding, that's the actual term for it.
Oh, damn.
Anyways, one of the gray cats on the island caught an officer's eye. It had a small pink collar on. After chasing down the cat, yes, this is real
I thought it was
footage of
supposed to
the
be
police
yellow.
in a struggle with a wild cat. They actually do find an SD card under its collar.
Damn,
The
okay.
hacker wasn't lying. There really was a copy of the virus and the source code on the drive. The police were finally closer to catching the hacker. But the next day, there was some very surprising news. And this time, they didn't need to...
I mean, wouldn't it be pretty easy to track him? He said like it's a tiny island in Oshima or something, so like there can't be too many people going on it. So shouldn't be too hard to track him.
solve any puzzles because it was being reported by every news outlet. The hacker who had terrorized Japan all year had died. Every news station had received this photo with a note saying, "I messed up. I lost our little game. I don't want to be caught, so I will commit suicide." Was this the way it was all going to end?
Seems like a way to disappear.
No, of course not. In fact, the police had built a pretty detailed profile on the hacker. He seemed to be a 30 to 40-year-old man, likely living in the Tokyo area with extensive programming experience. I mean, he wrote all the viruses himself in C#. They also knew he had an anti-authority outlook and was likely an otaku for obvious reasons.
Okay, but I don't feel like that narrows it down too much. Someone into coding might also be into like otaku geek culture, you know? Yeah, that doesn't narrow it down that much. I don't know.
To build this profile, they needed extensive help from the American FBI. And
Really?
since one of his threats was to blow up an airplane flying to the US, the FBI was happy to oblige. The real breakthrough, however, came when the police started reviewing security camera footage on
What is
Enoshima.
this?
2 days before police found that
That's literally what I was thinking, like, Enoshima isn't that big of a place or whatever, so it can't be that hard to find the guy who went to put the collar on the cat.
SD card, someone had approached a cat and appeared to be adjusting something on its neck. Another camera caught the same man speeding off on a motorbike. After a long search, the man was identified.
Merde. Wait, what is this? Nerd, young, foolish biker on a bike with old school outfit stock photo. Great.
As Katayama Yusuke, a 30-year-old IT worker from Tokyo who looks exactly like Jagex's Mod Ash. Now, the police had no idea whether this was actually their guy. He could have just been a stooge or a random guy who was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
We're watching a video about like a hacker in Japan who was playing a game with the cops, I guess.
It's not exactly a crime to pet a cat on the cat island, if you get what I'm saying. They decide to put him under 24/7 surveillance, and for 2 weeks, all they see is him coming home from work and playing video games and browsing the internet. That's all he does. So eventually they get fed up and just arrest him and seize all his computers.
Okay.
When they search them, they don't find any trace of the virus. But they do learn that this guy had built his own computers, just like the hacker had built his own viruses.
Nice.
And get this, he was a regular patron of cat cafes. Coincidence?
Okay.
Yes, that's a coincidence, but that was enough probable cause to detain him. Now the Japanese police could use their trump card, and you can probably guess what that is. They're going to interrogate him for 12 hours.
I mean, I don't know if I understand probable cause, but he likes cats and he likes building computer, and that's enough. That's probable cause, really.
Hours a day until he confesses. But Katayama played a Uno reverse card that the cops had never seen before. He asked for a lawyer. Yeah, guys,
No.
if the cops keep you in a dimly lit room and try to gaslight you into crimes you didn't commit, always call a lawyer, okay? Anyways, so Katayama's lawyers were immediately like, what the hell? Where's all the evidence? There was actually so little evidence that Katayama and the lawyers started doing podcasts and a whole press tour about how little evidence there was. Basically, the cops could prove he was on the island, but had no evidence of what he did there. Actually, I feel like I've heard that before somewhere. Legally, the police had to release Katayama after 23 days, unless they used their favorite life hack to get around that inconvenience. So yeah, after releasing him, they immediately rearrested him for a similar but technically different crime, like criminal intimidation or use of an illegal electromagnetic record. Like, seriously, look at this shit. They kept him in jail with a...
Wait. Disruption of business, communicate, trade post. Obstruction by deception, hijack law, bomb mail. Threat mail, kindergarten, threat celebrity. Disruption of business, Issei shrine, shock threat. Wait, so did they actually find proof that he did? Sorry, did they actually find proof that he did those threats, or do they just like say, you might be the guy? Disruption of business, school threat, mail. Disruption of business, AKB threat. Illegal electromagnetic record. Okay.
A trial for over a year. Super cool justice system, guys. Now, the Japanese police couldn't actually do this forever, so they were desperate to use this time to build a real case. They did not get very far, though, and I know this because they spent months trying to convince Katayama's mom to legally disown him and rat on him.
Bruh.
Eventually, they had to give up and go hat in hand to beg the FBI for help again. And since the FBI has a cybercrime division that actually knows how to investigate, cyber crimes, they easily uncovered some actual evidence. It turns out that Katayama had used Tor when the hackings happened, and they traced the Dropbox hosting his Trojan.
But then I don't want to be that guy, but doesn't he... I mean, I don't really know the Japanese system, but doesn't he have a lot of ground to be like, sure, I was guilty of that, but damn, you better be lenient to me because of how much lying you did in the first place with no evidence? I don't know. Does it work like that? Isn't it like an abuse of justice, right? It's nice that they think he's the guy, but they had no proof for a year or something, and yet they still kept arresting him.
To a computer at the office where he worked. With this evidence in hand, the police were finally confident to let this case go to trial, and they let Katayama out on bail for $100,000 of his mom's hard-earned money. However, Katayama still had one last trick up his sleeve. He had secretly purchased a second cell phone, which he buried near the Arakawa River in Tokyo. He programmed the phone to send more threats from his secret Riddler persona, including one targeting a certain lawyer, while he would be in the middle of his trial. Then he'd be like, guys, there's no way I could have sent that message because I was in court. And the police would have no choice but to conclude that he was not the Riddler. It was a master plan, kind of like when Light erases all his memories and spends 5 months under supervision to prove he's not Kira.
True.
But unfortunately, Katayama forgot or somehow didn't consider that the police were following him. You know, the only thing that they know how.
Okay, I thought he was actually smart. Like, from the way he described it, I thought he had done that in advance in case he was caught. So, like, before he first got arrested. I guess not. Well. Damn.
To do. So yeah, they saw him bury the phone, and immediately after the message was sent in court, they went and retrieved it. This was such a gigantic own that Katayama immediately knew the jig was up and just confessed. He testified that his motive was a deep hatred towards the police for how they treated him earlier on in his.
You said you had unpleasant experience when incarcerated in 2005. Yes, after waiting at the Tokyo detention house, I went to Kawagoe Juvenile Prison. In the first 8 weeks of intake, there was classification and new inmate training. During those 8 weeks, a prison officer targeted me and I was bullied by other inmates. I was the one he singled out. I was just like the relationship between Sergeant Hartman and Snowball in the movie. Full Metal Jacket. Okay. So I felt anger toward the police. Okay.
His life. He was convicted of making terroristic threats and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Police actually felt so bad for his mom that they returned her $40,000 of the $100,000 she paid for his bail.
Is that the reason?
By 2026, Katayama has done his time and he's actually out of prison. But somehow, after being Japan's dumbest supervillain ever, he has just completely vanished. No podcast, no If I Did It style book deal. The last time anyone heard from the guy was sentencing day in 2014. And ever since then, he's been a ghost. And that's probably why most people only remember this case as...
I mean, it's a good thing. Maybe, you know, he did his time and maybe he turned his life around and became a normal person. I don't know. Like, let's hope that's why he hasn't appeared again.
That summer Japan got spammed by bomb threats, or that time the cops chased a cat around. But to me, those aren't even the craziest parts of the story. The craziest part is the police got 2 completely innocent people to confess to crimes they didn't commit.
Unfortunately, we know that's not rare, right? I mean, Japan has 99% conviction rate. I mean, this probably happens literally every single day.
I mean, one of them even got sentenced before the cops realized. We'll have to talk about that in part 2, but yeah, nobody even batted an eye. There was no huge reform, no, maybe our system incentivizes false confessions. Just a shrug and many more 12-hour interrogations. So yeah, the moral of the story is don't download random programs from 2chan, and if the cops ever sit you in a dark room for a quick chat, get a lawyer. Play War Thunder for free on PC,
I'm surprised people still don't do it. I feel like, you know, this specific line of like, never talk to the cops, get a lawyer, is something that like, I've heard so many times, all the time, and I think it's mostly from YouTube. So maybe like younger generation like us who are on YouTube all the time, we've heard it so many times that we would do it. But I still can't imagine, like, you know. But I guess for some people it's like, they feel like they look guilty if they get a lawyer, you know, so they try to talk themselves or something. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, interesting case. I mean, what can I say? At least no one got out, you know. At least there is that in this case. No one got out. Good video. Good video. Very interesting.